Our website is managed by David. A while ago, we posted up a little notice that might have caught your attention. It said that the Reverend John Snow Jr. had been named to be the Indigenous minister for us here in the Pacific Mountain region. We're getting to know John and appreciate him here in the Pacific Mountain region. He was just ordained this September and is studying right now at VST. He graduated from the Sandy Soto Center earlier. John describes himself as a traveler and a pilgrim through two different ways of knowledge: the United Church of Canada and his own traditional teachings from the Stoney Nakotas. In standing in front of a sacred mountain, Yaminaska, John shared its place in his world and his spirituality. It is beautiful. It is a sacred, holy mountain, a visible sacrament, just like the ones we celebrate, as we will next Sunday with communion. It's a source of healing, applying the Creator's knowledge and wisdom to how we live. John speaks to us as a survivor of the day school program. And so with that in his past, he comes to that mountain to speak to us and tells and shares the story told by Walking Buffalo long ago. It's a story that he shared now to help us understand and celebrate Orange Shirt Day. The question was asked to Walking Buffalo, why is the forest so beautiful? It's a very basic story that John shared with us. The forest has the colors we see before us: red, green, white, yellow, and black, all intermingled in the forest, in the trees and in the plants and in the wildlife. The question was asked, why is the forest that way? White Buffalo taught the forest is beautiful because it grew according to the plan of the Creator, a diversity of strength. All colors, all plants, trees, and animals in harmony and in community, helping each other to grow. He called it also a diversity of strength, the stronger helping the weaker, perhaps as Misha was talking about with the images on our Victoria t-shirts. And so we are invited to observe and learn from the plants, trees, and animals. John called it Nature's University. The forest is Nature's University, teaching us to live in diversity, strength, harmony, and beauty with one another, with all the trees, plants, and the wildlife. So we begin to talk and listen to the story of the forest and of the creators. I have invited John to come and Zoom with us here at First Met so we can hear more and learn more from the stories. He invited us to live reconciled strategies. How would we talk with each other and grow into that kind of beautiful forest that the Creator had originally intended? How can we share and deeply listen so we can begin to work together on reconciled strategies? John asks us, I wonder if you have a special place that talks to you when you go. Does it have a name? Would you call it holy? I wonder what you have learned from a tree. I wonder what we have learned from being in a forest. I wonder what we can learn together from Orange T-shirt Day and the encouragement of Orange Hearts. John introduced us to Beverly Brown. She's from the Squamish First Nation. Many of you will have been to Squamish over the years. And she's also from the Helsik First Nation. She, too, serves the national church, as John does, in the Longhouse Church, the United Church of Canada Indigenous Council, as well as at the Pacific Mountain region as co-chair with Ray. All four of her grandparents lived through the residential school experience. 3 were at St. Michael's School, which was in Alert Bay, and one of her grandparents was in Coqualitz, a residential school in Chilliwack. Her take was a little different than John's, because she said Orange Shirt Day reminds us that every child matters. And as we value each child, we're beginning to willing to talk about intergenerational trauma, because people like Beverly herself have not been to residential school, but still have suffered. She wants us to lift up every child, to lift up other communities, because now that is the inheritance of those of us that share this residential school story, that we are called to make reparations and to lift others up. We, the non-Indigenous church, should be lifting up the communities and congregations of the BC Indigenous ministries. Honor them in a good way. And it's an important start how many churches are celebrating Orange T-shirt Day, or even did last Sunday, or special programs during the week. I wonder what we could do to make it better, to make all people feel like they mattered. And not just pay lip service. She was very clear about that. What can we really do to help? We need the resources of the Pacific Mountain region to do that, so that we might have good relations in our day. We need to work to restore the dignity that was stolen from those children when they were sent to the residential schools. She says with a smile to us, we are all a work in progress. The final person that John introduced us to is Ray Jones, who's Gitxsan. He went to residential school in Edmonton, Alberta. He said that we cannot forget the legacy of the residential school. And we have to hold on, even in a painful hold, the negative effects of what happened to his other survivors. He's talking about the loss of language, the loss of culture. When Ray was sent to Edmonton, he had found 3 people. He didn't know them before he went there. But secretly, when no one could see them, they would speak Gitxsan to each other to hold the language and all that it meant to them. He talked about the 3 things that are most important to him when he looks back at those years in residential school. He talked first about the loneliness, how far he'd been sent to go to school. He didn't know anyone, and he was sent to a school that included students from 5 years of age to 20 years of age. He was so lonely for home. The second thing he named was hunger. The students were hungry all the time. Food was scarce. He used as one just quick illustration that they used powder milk and they super diluted it. But he remembered they had oranges for dessert. Oranges that became like a trade item because they could stuff them in their pockets and take them out. And that's another connection for him with our shirts today, our orange shirts. But the third thing he remembered so clearly about those years in residential school was living in fear. Fear of getting the strap, fear of being beaten up by the bigger boys, And the inheritance of that year of fear, those years of fear, is living in constant vigilance, constantly aware what might be happening to me next. We're so grateful for people like Ray talking and working with us in Pacific Mountain region. John affirmed that we have done a lot of work over the years as far as working on reconciliation issues and concerns here. But he gave us some very clear and helpful things, which is why I hope and pray that he'll be with us to give us more direction and clarity. He said we need to be familiar, we need to do our own homework with the foundational documents of this: the call to the church, the Caretakers Report, and the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People. 3 foundational pieces. The Caretakers Report is the church's report, its vision and mandate. What is needed for the next steps? What acts of reconciliation are we as Pacific Mountain region called to work towards? We need to know the TRC and their calls to action, the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, and their calls to action. He said there's a lot of food for thought. There's a lot of calls to action there. It's very important that we do our homework and know this report. I wonder what acts of reconciliation we as First Metropolitan Church Victoria, what are we called to do? What is God calling us to do in this neighborhood of Quadra and Balmoral, in the South Island, in Pacific Mountain, in COVID? The UN Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples has been in our hands for a while. Those are our 3 core documents. Jesus said, "Feed my sheep, feed my lamb." It's almost as if John is telling us, and here's how we can do it. These little lambs that were so frightened and hungry and lonely, they're grown men and women now. And they're turning to us and saying, what are you going to do? I think the time is exciting for us to roll up our sleeves, literally and figuratively, to be involved in acts of reconciliation, as Beverly called us to do, to lift up and honor so that every child now knows that they matter. And I wonder what reconciliation action will look like in the future. And I wonder what Canada as a country is called to do. But we're not a country. We are a church. We listen to the words of Christ who says to us, "Do you love me? Feed my sheep." Christ's servants are telling us, and here's one way you can do that. As Beverly said, we are learning as we go. We are learning as we go. We have been blessed by John and all of the Pacific Mountain region Indigenous ministries. We are grateful for their tenacity, for their strength and their vision, and for all the beauty of these holy mountains. Amen.